neighbors. Welcome to another episode of Tipsy Neighbors. We are five friends with varied opinions and backgrounds. We openly and honestly discuss the subject of the day. No topic is off limits. In fact, if you'd like us to chat about something that's been on your mind, find us on the web at tipsyneighbors.com, on Instagram at The Tipsy Neighbors, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Tipsy Neighbors. Now let's get this episode started.
Welcome to another episode of Tipsy Neighbors. Here we are again. We're going over some recent questions, comments from listeners. Anyways, this question comes from a listener, and they're asking about our upbringing in the church, our departing of the church, and the question kind of raised another question in there of what do we think about our children in the church and if they decide to go to church.
Yeah.
This is the LDS church. Mm-hmm. We all grew up here in Utah.
Born and raised.
We were all born and raised here, and we grew up LDS at some point. So that's the question.
It's a big topic.
It's a big topic.
It's a big ask.
I think we've tried to talk about it a few times and kind of breached the subject a little bit, but we're going to dig into it a little bit.
Yeah, and I also think it relates to a lot of people because the more and more you meet people, there's more people that left, and there's more people that have split, where maybe one spouse left or whatever. So a lot of families are dealing with that conversation and how to navigate it through working with kids and things like that too. And I think it's...
Yeah, and I don't think it's just LDS. I think it's religion in general.
100%.
Is what it seems like these days. Here in Utah, it's predominantly LDS, Mormon. But I think in general, the religion thing and kids and the millennials and so on are parting ways with the church and kind of living their own lives and morals.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just an LDS thing, but...
Which I think is kind of cool because I think it's more widely accepted to kind of do that versus when we were growing up and becoming young adults, it was less accepted that was even an option. Does that make sense?
Do you think that's more a factor of the next generation is questioning authority in general?
Oh, totally. That's a good point.
You know what I mean?
That's
Not to go too
point.
far off our topic. But
Yeah.
But I think that's hard for us as parents too, to see our kids deviate from what we've taught. And if that's religion or anything else, as our kids, we've taught them all these things. This is what we do. And then they deviate from that. How do we handle it?
Right.
I know. That's very valid.
That technology, I think, plays a huge part in it, right? Where back when we were all young, the internet really wasn't quite what it is today.
Right.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And so it was what our parents told us, or our outside sources, not the internet.
Our community.
Yeah.
The community was telling us what religion is and what things are and what the facts are. But now with technology, there's a lot more deep diving into things.
Yeah.
Whether there's true things or false things out there. I mean, you can find it on both sides.
Well, I think it's a great point. Last night, I was just thinking about, I was laying in bed and Curry was gone in Arizona, and I was just scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and I thought, in 30 minutes, the amount of information that I was receiving that like contradicted that, but it's all out there. And I think it goes back to this religion thing. Like there is so much information out there that we're constantly like having access to, which kind of triggers our minds to think and question and stuff. So I think that's a very valid point of social media being a big part.
And I think our kids are exposed to more diversity now than we were exposed to at their age.
Definitely.
There's diversity in families, atmosphere, everything else. And so as Whitney said, like you're getting information from your community. Well, that community is far more diverse.
Oh,
yes.
It is not all the same
Like,
from what we grew up with. We grew up with the same
very good
community. It
point.
was all the same.
Growing up, I never it never even crossed my mind, not that it was a negative thing or not, but conversing with like a gay parent family household, like that wasn't, it was never even a thought, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Like it wasn't even a
is so
possibility
diverse.
because you didn't even see that was
It was out there.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
the guy behind me is bi, and it's just,
Yeah.
that's Tyler. That's Tyler, by the way.
At least has the last
Tyler,
name.
he's Tyler.
I was born
He's not
by-
actually bi.
But that's where I think our kids are exposed to such a different community that they're
Right.
getting feedback and responsibility and all these things from that. When we grew up, it was the same. Everybody was generally the same.
Oh yeah.
That is actually fascinating because you think back and like, yeah, you had your life planned out for you. Like you had this tunnel of like what your life was going to be. And in the church, it was like, you had that outlined, you know, you're going to do this and then you become this and then you become this and then you've got this.
And it was
you
the
know,
same.
Then you go on a mission, you come home, you get married. Like it was outlined, you knew exactly. And then it was like eternally as well.
Yeah.
Like you did all these things and then this was going to be your eternal outlook and forecast for your life too. Whereas like, and everybody believed that same thing versus now, you know, yeah, you see that there are plenty of options and people are happy in those options.
The tricky part is you have the people that are spreading, shall we call it, I don't want to politically align this statement, but fake news. The people that are lying are getting really good at being convincing.
Oh,
So
yes.
trying to sift through
Yes.
the truth
Great point.
versus the falsehoods out there, it takes some effort. And you know, for me personally, as I was getting all of this bombardment of information, I had to really dig deep to figure out what was true and what was false for me. And
Yeah, which I think is fascinating because your process happened much later than mine. And so like mine was all, you were reading printed stuff. Like does that make sense? Like people were giving you printed books or journals or things like that. And now it is all online and you like that. I never even thought about that of just the amount of misinformation mixed in with everything too.
Well, and when you were reading it on print or magazine, book, whatever it was, newspaper, like those were people that were specialized in that whatever.
yes,
Nowadays, it's social media where it's me, you, and the other.
It's an
and
opinion.
anyone else.
yeah, that people
Everybody
pass
has
off
a platform.
as fact though.
Totally.
And like 5 people like it, and then it goes to 20, and then it goes to 400, and then it goes, and all of a sudden, you know, 40 million people have seen this whatever video, whether it's fact or not, it's opinion.
Well, and the crazy thing is, it's both sides of the argument.
Yes.
Whatever you want to, if you want somebody to confirm what you believe, you can find
it.
dozens,
Yeah.
if not hundreds of sources,
Well,
right?
that's
Correct, because the Earth is flat and now there's no space.
Right,
and,
right.
You know,
And
Pluto's not a
if you
planet.
want to see
Exactly.
more of the
Exactly.
same, just watch a full video of something you enjoy,
that's
and
the
then
thing of-
all of a sudden that's what you keep
Yeah.
getting.
And
And
that's
No,
on
it's
social
true.
media, right? And our
Yeah.
phones listen
Yep.
to us, and it has that smart technology. And Ty could probably go into that, but
yeah,
I mean,
The resident geek.
whatever your cup of tea is what your social media is going to be
Yes.
tailored to. So it's not going to be well rounded.
Well, yeah, and you
going
jerks
to
share the
be.
weirdest stuff with me,
That's
so
why-
I also get what you want.
being friends with all the people at the table, my feed is so screwed up from my own tasting.
half the time Brad's feed thinks he's gay, and it was just because I sent him a video.
Wait, what is it if you are attracted to balloons?
yeah.
Wait, what?
Justin sent us a video of a guy who like is in love with balloons and
loves
abuses
balloons.
them.
Oh my god!
Justin's
Like
feed-
specifically
Justin's
says,
feed is
you
very
could take a
different.
12-inch balloon and blow it up to 11 inches, and it'll take a lot of abuse.
Justin's
This
feed
is why
very
I'm
different.
not on that group chat.
Our listeners are gonna be like, "That's
like my
weird that he's
feed.
not on that chat."
You are protected.
I am protected. Oh my god.
Gosh,
Oh my goodness.
Okay, back to the topic.
Bringing it back.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, yes. So you can see the rabbit holes. You can
Quickly
up
spiral
in.
down.
Obviously, social media knows your style.
I'm going to get a bag of balloons for my birthday.
I'm going to get you
been replaced.
one of those big shiny Mylar ones. How lucky are you?
Wow.
Would you like helium in that?
Well, I'm curious, like, okay, growing up, we talked about how everybody in our network believed the same thing, but like, growing up, what was your experience as far as the church goes? Like, was that the only way? And did you feel in a sense that there was like disappointment if you questioned it, or
could
that you
you
were going to
question that?
Yeah, were you allowed to question that and like bring up questions that maybe came up, or not wanting to be a part of it, etc.?
I think in my household, since I probably have the shortest religious experience here, I don't think it was you can't question. It was just don't talk about it at the house. But like I said in previous episodes, my friends were not LDS growing up, which was odd for Utah. And so it was, you go to church, you do your things, and you'll be punished if you don't. Just don't talk about it. If that makes sense. Like, we went to church.
Like, you didn't talk about church at home at all?
No.
Like,
And even
You
at
went,
church, my
and
dad
it
would go to
wasn't.
church and he would be talking to other people at the church. And he's like, yeah, this freaking dipshit at work, he did this thing. Like, the guy's such a dumbass. Like, he would talk like this at church. And I'd be like, what the hell? Like, you're not supposed to talk like that at church, I thought. And so it was always like contradictory to me from like a young age. So I was never quite a believer.
yeah.
And with my friends not being LDS, it always made me question from a young age. And so,
Well, my best friend growing up was not Mormon. They were non-denominational Christian, and I do remember some arguments that came up between him and I. And we were young, but it'd be like, God is three separate people, God is one, like things like that. And I just remember his mom always being like, "Well, it's okay that you guys believe different things."
Yeah. Yeah.
my
So
friends
that
were
was always like
atheists.
But did you
into me.
believe you were right? Like,
Yeah,
that you
for
were
sure.
like, you
For
had
sure, because
an
I grew up
upper
with the
hand, or
one
like
true
you kind of
church,
felt bad.
right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
yes,
Churches. And maybe
Yeah.
that's what's different with me was my friends were atheists. So there was
no contention.
There was nothing
Yeah, but
versus
I would
this,
say-
and it was
so
like,
it
I would've
wasn't like
felt
they were
bad for
talking
people
about
like
something
that.
else.
for
Does that make
atheists.
sense? Yeah, because I would have been like, "Oh my gosh, that's so sad." Like that's so sad that they don't believe in like an afterlife, and that there's like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did
You're
not
just
think
going to
that at
die
all.
and go in the dirt.
yeah,
now-
like
and now
I,
you married that.
in a way,
Yeah.
there was kind of this self-righteousness because I felt like I had it all. Does that
Yes.
make sense? Like
Yeah.
I was a part of that, and I was born into that. Into the
Perfection.
religion, but you
You're born into the
The
covenant.
fullness
yes,
of
exactly,
the gospel.
exactly,
Totally.
And so I almost held myself. Even, I mean, I would say this lasted even up into my teen years too, where you kind of projected yourself above those who weren't.
Yeah, I never thought like, oh, I think I'm above them or whatever. But looking back,
I'll see you in the third
for
tier.
sure,
Yeah.
I was
There's
like,
almost a sense of pity. Like,
100. Yes, that's what. It
Yeah,
wasn't like I'm
that's a
better
good
than
way
you.
to
It
put
was
it.
like I feel so sorry for you that
Correct.
you don't have what I have.
yeah,
And I didn't have that. It was like opposite of like, and back then I probably believed in a heaven, where now it's a little different story. But back then I believed in a heaven. But when I would go to church with my family and the other kids in my church, it was, hey, your friends are not going to heaven, or at least the top tier.
Yeah.
Sea
the celestial.
Sea turtle.
Sea turtle.
Whitney taught me that one. That's how I remembered it.
Oh my
Sea
gosh,
turtle.
that's so funny. That's
sea
exactly
turtle?
how I remembered it too.
Yeah,
Turtle.
terrestrial.
That's the
What?
different
Sea-
degree.
Sea
Celestial
turtle.
tur.
Sea turtle. I never knew that. All
I
growing
still don't
up.
get it.
It's the
Oh,
degrees.
honey, do
Celestial.
you need another shot?
Terrestrial. Celestial. So sea turtle. No? All right.
We draw a map, please.
All I can do is continue to say the exact same thing at you while you look at me like,
All I know is at church they taught you 3 degrees of heaven.
Glory.
Right.
Get the terms
Glory.
right.
And then outer darkness.
It's important.
But
We're all in outer darkness, so it doesn't matter.
the people
Yeah,
that I
apparently.
knew that were not going to the top tier, if you will, like those were
The turtles.
Yeah, the C's. The C's.
No, the
The
turtles.
people
are
that
not
weren't going up there, like the ones that were in
yeah.
the lower level.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And somehow, just by being a non-believer, I was going to be at least a tur.
But see, then it's
That's
like,
right.
okay, even, well, yeah.
But-
I won't
but-
get
but-
into the teachings of that.
But
But,
in my head, as a kid,
Yeah.
being 6 through 12 or
Sure.
whatever it was,
Yeah.
I was thinking, I'm like, if like these people I know that are not LDS and they don't believe in a God at all, how like these people are so nice to everyone,
Yeah.
even myself included. How are they not going to be in the same tier as this guy in my neighborhood that's an a-hole to all humans? It seems.
It's like the guy you
as a
had to call
kid-
Bishop. But the nice neighbor, like the neighbors that made you guys breakfast, like that is serving your fellow man. There is
They
that
were-
is the greatest
They were
calling,
atheists,
right?
so I'm like, oh, they're
Yeah.
going to like the bottom tier, almost outer darkness.
I don't even think
Wait,
as
you
a
didn't
kid.
eat atheist breakfast, did you, Brad?
That's what it did. That's what
delicious.
happened.
but
Here we
Like,
are.
to who I am today.
I'm glad I'm not in this mindset anymore. But like, I think back to what I probably would have thought growing up, and it would have been like, these are great people. Why are they not a part of this? Like, they need to be saved, or they need to have they need to be a part of the church to live their fullest life, and they're missing out on being in this wonderful place. Like, so in a way, like, you are thinking that even though they're doing these nice, kind things, there's still pity
They're
for
lacking.
them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just thought about it differently.
No, and I
My-
think
my
that's
mindset,
great.
right?
I think that's great.
I thought it reverse of like, you guys, like, do you not see how great these people are?
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Like, why not? And maybe that's why I am who I am today.
In my early 20s, I would refer to those people, like, because I lived in Spokane, Washington at the time. I would refer to them as they're Mormons. They just don't know it yet. Like, they're such good people.
What
right?
a geek.
Oh my gosh, that's it.
But that was my
You're
You're
raised to
mindset.
believe.
That
Yeah.
was my mindset.
I'm going to save these people.
But
Yeah, they're going to be ready someday,
I'm going to convert.
and I'm going to
these guys.
share it with them.
Convert the crap out of them.
did you guys feel like, I mean, Brad just said no, but like, I feel like growing up, church was not just on Sunday. It was almost like your whole life was kind of centered around that, as far as like,
yes.
you always remembered you got callings that your parents have to be a part of, and then you have mutual night, and then our family wasn't as much into like the family home evening on Monday nights, and like all of the we would try like praying as a family before you go to bed, and then in the morning, and you have scripture study. Like, we tried that here and there, but never like stuck to it. But I know a lot of my friends who that was very much the ritual of, like, your whole family gets together and says a prayer before bed. And
It was very consistent growing up. Like,
Family
we had
prayer.
Family prayer every morning.
Family home evening on Mondays.
And if you weren't there, it was like catastrophe. Like, it was a huge deal if you were not there in the morning for it.
My parents, bless their heart,
In the
tried to
morning?
do
Morning.
family home evening, scripture reading,
Nights?
prayer.
Nights and mornings?
We just lacked the ability to be consistent with it. So
Yeah.
Same with my family.
Yeah, we did it like 3 times total. Like, hey, we should do.
I don't
family
think it
home
was
evening.
anybody's fault, but right.
Oh, ours was like severe guilt. If you did not make it in the morning for scripture study, like, there was guilt associated with it of you were not here and why not.
So was that same guilt kind of used against you throughout your whole life, as far as like, if you did
absolutely.
not go to mutual, there was some sense
There was
of
no
guilt.
reason not
there
to
was,
go.
And did they use control of, like, you're not gonna make it to the celestial kingdom, or you're not gonna you're not making good choices to be with Jesus. Like, does that make sense?
Ours was never guilt as far as you're not going to make it to this level, or you're not going to do this, or you're not. It was just guilt of general. You're not living what you're taught. You're not living. You're not enough.
How dare you?
I feel like you're jumping right to the core of what unraveled for me. So,
Oh yeah, let's share, elaborate on that.
Yeah. What do you mean?
well, so for me, I tend to fixate on things. I am pretty good at focus. I have ADD, but when I have enough caffeine or whatever it is, I can really fixate and focus on something and get a lot of stuff done. And the fact that the church, like the foundation of the church, or the basic teaching for me that I fixated on, was be ye perfect. Oh, but nobody can be perfect, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was always trying to strive for this perfection actually was very damning for me, because I am my own worst critic.
Yes.
And therapists have told me that it's on a special sort of fucking crazy level.
Still to this day, I think. Not religion wise.
No, I still operate like that.
Yeah.
I do. I tend to...
I'm not a therapist.
I put everything I can into something. And if you tell me what the expectations are, I will literally
Exceed.
I do everything I can to meet those expectations to a fault, to my own detriment at times, and so the fact that I was just never measuring up. I was never good enough for my personality type. It was driving me insane. It was driving me into a very deep depression. And then, let's pile on, and we'll probably get into some of this in my story, which we'll do in a little while, but pile on a divorce, which is not a very, it's a frowned upon.
Fun or stress free.
Well, yeah. And the church, what does the church think of divorce?
Well,
Right?
and temple divorce. That
Yeah. So all of these personal failures, I mean, echoing in my head was Elder Packer's, no success outside of the home can compensate for failure in the family, or whatever, I was just staring at, here is my family falling apart. So that as I started, I started doing the Mormon things. I feel like I was humbling myself. I was praying for some relief on all of this stuff, and I just didn't get any answers. I tried to be that good Mormon guy, tried to overcome all of my issues, especially as I was struggling in the marriage and whatnot. And that perfection was just, it kept getting further and further and further away.
But I think that's taught in the religion, Ty, is perfection. And with personalities like yours, and I think also mine, when you can't achieve perfection, it becomes a problem.
You start to just internalize everything.
Correct.
You hear about this snowball rolling forth as the gospel, and it gets bigger and everything. I had my own snowball of shame and guilt about not measuring up, not always failing my wife, failing my kids, failing, and all of that stuff just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as I started working through therapy and stuff, and I had LDS therapists and I had non-LDS therapists, and everybody was just saying, give yourself a break. You're a human. You're going to run into this stuff. But every time, every 6 months when General Conference would roll around, I'd be on the verge of killing myself, because here is another pile of shit that I'm living in, that I'm just putting on myself. And I know I shouldn't be going that deep on it.
And what's General Conference, just for the listeners?
So General Conference is a worldwide conference where the leaders of the Mormon Church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, several of them get a chance to just give talks to the membership. So
Yeah,
it's a pretty big deal.
And I remember that. I remember that, like, so growing up as kids, I hated General Conference because it was so over my head. And I remember they give you these
boring.
activity books that you would sit at home and you'd literally, as a little
Bingo.
kid,
Right.
a little kid, you have to sit there for 4 hours. 4 hours. And it was on Saturday and then
and
4 hours on Sunday. As a little kid, what the hell would be bouncing off the walls? But
Well, it
anyways,
was 5 hours on Saturday when you were
When you got
priesthood
older,
age.
Yeah.
but I think that
Hey, they got the women involved in it later.
these conferences is when they brought up a lot of changes that were happening within the church, and they would remind you of things. And I think the perfection thing is so huge. And I'm glad you brought that up, because just the idea that there is perfection that we strive for is a setup for failure that ultimately you're punished for.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And
Like
that you'll
every
never
time you
achieve.
fail, there is a punishment usually associated with that failure.
And I'm not trying to pretend that everybody has my personality type, right? Like some people can accept, hey, I'm not perfect and it still works for them. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Ty. My personality is the same way.
Like everything. And as I was getting worse and worse and worse, everybody's like, hey, maybe it's time to just step away for a minute. And as I did that and started, that started my crises, right? It was like
Right.
when I did that, all of a sudden I felt different. I felt a lot of these things that I was supposed to feel at church. So I was like, I'm going to explore this further. So that's where.
So it brings up a good point. As we've gone through these and we've stepped away from the church, as the listener brought up, so that was our experiences. We've all kind of stepped away. How would you confront that now with your kids coming to you wanting to go back to church? Religion in general.
So my kids still go to church with their mother. My son's talking about going on a mission, so they're very, my eldest daughter she kind of had her wild life a little bit, but, she likes church. So she keeps going, and, she's dating a return missionary. He's a great guy right now, and I'm excited about all of that stuff. And I support them in the fact that I support anybody in their beliefs, right? Like it's more important to me that I support what they want rather than I support a particular organization. It's not like if they went to another church that I wouldn't support them over there too.
Right.
So I, from that standpoint, from the standpoint of where I am in the church right now, I only tell my kids one thing, and it's don't let anybody tell you can't ask questions. And if somebody says you're the problem as the answer to one of your questions, then you really need to dig deeper on that question, because there's an answer out there that somebody's scared to give you.
I love that.
That's a great response. That's a great response.
And I feel like that's just erased any of the combativeness.
Yeah.
I don't think my ex-wife is going to find issues with that response to that.
Well, yeah. And the good thing is it's not like telling your kids, especially where there's a split family, right? And your beliefs are very different than the other side of that.
Yeah.
And so it's not saying they're wrong. It's saying it's okay. Whatever you believe, just ask questions. If you want to ask those questions.
Yeah. And I think my kids would tell you that they've seen a difference in me. They've seen a happier dad, a happier Ty, which that's the goal for me anyway, is to kind of, I feel like I'm in a way better headspace, and I just feel more comfortable, more authentic, and I don't feel like I'm living a lie.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a hard subject because I think that there are so many who have suffered deeply because of the church. And so I can see why people would be hesitant to allow their kids to be a part of it.
I would have a very hard time
Does that make sense?
having my kids be a part of the Mormon church.
I just remember having friends who died. I had brothers who died or family members, and it was used against them. If you don't go to church or if you don't go on a mission, you're going to be the reason that we aren't together as a family forever. Does that make sense?
That's brutal.
So you can see that there's and this is again, in all of this, there are many neighbors, there are many of our friends and family who are active members of the church who we love dearly and who are very much a part of our community and support us. And so we mean no offense in any of these conversations, but there are many who have been deeply hurt because of that. And I think that knowing that as a parent, you can't protect your kids forever, and you can't protect your kids in all things. And
but you
I think
try to protect them in what you can.
But you want to.
And that is one of
exactly
the things that some people that step away from the church feel like they can kind of protect their kids from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I think for us personally, even when we got married, we were still going to church, kind of.
You really wanted to.
And it wasn't
I was not. I was not.
You guys went to LDS church as a gay couple.
We did in this ward, which is
this exact neighborhood. Which
anyone listening, that is.
I was very opposed to it. I am not religious at all. I've stepped away from religion in general, but Justin wanted to do that, and that was something that we did do.
Well, and this was 13 years ago. This isn't today. Today you'll see people on social media that are doing that, and I think that's fantastic. I see the change. I think but back then it was not common. But for me, it wasn't because of the belief side of it. It was the socialization. It was the connection. And I feel like that is something positive about.
When we were doing it for our kids, we were doing it for our kids to be able to feel connected to the neighbors.
Right. But I also think it was for myself too.
For you.
I'm used to that connection. I'm used to having community. And so it's one of those things that I do think is a positive thing that the church has taught us.
I think that is the hardest reason to step away.
Yeah. But with that being said, we went with the kids and in being a blended family, the kids had, they were going to church with their mom. And so it crossed our mind a lot. How could we, if we were raised and we were forced to believe this certain way, wouldn't we be hypocrites if we didn't allow our kids to research and search that out? And does that make sense? It was hard for us to not be supportive of that after kind of going what we went through.
Yeah. Because even when, I wasn't a believer from a young age, but when Whitney went through her little faith crisis, we went to the LDS church, and I went as a supporter, just like Curry said he was. I went there because I enjoy the social aspect of it, like the religious part. I'm like, whatever. But the social aspect I loved. Mm-hmm. And then we ended up going LDS route, and then we went to a non-denominational, which was pretty cool. They had a donut shop and a coffee shop. That was awesome. They had live music with a band.
It was cool.
That was pretty cool. It was shorter than the LDS church, so I was definitely supportive of that.
I had a very hard time
leaving the church.
I was a true believer. I believed through and through. And even after everything Brad and I went through, I felt like one day it was always in my plan for us to get sealed in the temple one day, for us to be raising kids in the church. Like that was always the plan for me. So, and that's something that we talked about when we were going through it. Like
my plan was to fake it till I make it. Like, I can go BS with the bishop with the best of them.
But it was really hard
Yeah.
for me when things started to fall apart. And I struggled with it for probably longer than I should have. Like,
Well, it's a loss of community.
But
was
more than that, I mean,
every single thing in my life
was
was
all in.
tied to the church in some way.
Right.
Every single thing, really, every belief that you have, like you don't even realize
True.
you're
the amount of things it affects in your life until that falls apart.
literally from
Everything.
day one.
Yes.
That's what's been taught to you. That's what's in your brain.
And it's in so many facets of your life. It's
Yes.
not just like, hey, there's this religious part of you, and okay, that kind of fell apart. And it's literally in everything that you believe in your
It's
life.
that life plan that Justin talked about earlier. It's from day one.
Yeah.
Everything is laid out for the entirety of your
Like
life.
the tithing,
and after.
the tithing thing. I remember having conversations, like vivid conversations.
You're never going to get over the tithing thing.
It was 73 cents, Brad. Let it
87. It
go.
was 87.
I am going to bring you 87
shortchanging
cents
me.
tomorrow.
Stop shortchanging me.
Literally.
87 cents. Anyways, but I remember having that conversation with Whitney where she was like, no, I've had blessings paying tithing. It was like, do you know how many so-called blessings in quotations I have had without blessings?
Without paying
Without
tithing?
paying tithing? Like how many blessings I've had without paying tithing. Anyways, I remember that conversation like very vividly. And I brought up all these instances where something financial has happened to me one way or the other that could be considered a blessing or so. But it was this whole transition with Whitney was
It was hard, and
eye-opening
it was
for
a
me.
traumatic time in my life as well. What led me out of the church was my best friend from growing up passing away, and me thinking, I need to get my life in order so when I die, I can see him again. So
Yeah.
I was already going through that loss, and
trauma.
then and then all I was trying to do is buckle down and be like, I want to make sure that I am 100% in, and I believe that, like, fully believe everything that I'm taught. And I just started studying, and
we had
unfortunately,
the discussions.
we were taking the discussions, and unfortunately, the more studying I did, the more it led me out. But I struggled with that. Like, I remember driving down the road and pleading with God of like, you just need to, like, I'm so lost right now. Just please give me like, I wanted the church to be true. I need you to just show me a sign that the church is true, and I won't question it anymore. Like, I'll be on board with this. Like, I'll let everything that I have found go. And it took me a long time to accept the fact that that was the answer for me.
Yeah.
Like, that was the answer. And I struggled really bad with that. Like, it was really hard. So for me to then have my kids
Be exposed.
to that, and then maybe one day join that, is very hard for me to. And I would like to say I wouldn't, like, I'm not going to throw a big fit. If that is truly what they want, I'm going to let them do that. But it would be very hard for me to keep my mouth shut on some of the things.
Knowing
Like,
what you know.
there would be some
let me
big
prove you
discussions on
wrong.
that, especially because we just, like, Ty's kids were older
Right.
when you left, where
And they still have
ours-
a parent that is very
in.
actively.
and
urging
luckily for
them
me,
to
I
attend,
don't.
right?
Like, Izzy's dad ended up leaving the church a year or two after I left.
Yeah.
So that she has not been raised in any religion. And then
Yeah.
Scotty doesn't
And if
know
you
what
show,
religion is at all.
if you show our 7-year-old a picture of Jesus, you say, "Who is this?"
She's like, it's Dave Grohl, the lead
Which-
singer of the Foo Fighters.
As someone who was raised in the church,
I wish,
like,
but she's like, I don't know.
mind
I
blowing
have no idea.
Yeah.
The guy at the
when
grocery store.
you
like,
realize
sure.
your kid does not know who
Yeah.
Jesus is. Like, when that was
It's
so
bye-bye.
ingrained in you, And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, so odd that my small child
Has no idea.
does not know who this is.
Yeah. I think the biggest fear for me with especially I think with Asher is going along that same lines of like, what if she goes and subscribes to everything that they teach and then thinks less of our relationship with each other and doesn't want to be a part of our life because she believes that our marriage isn't real, or
we're not
does
in
that
line
make
with
sense?
what they're teaching.
I think that, and I think that that's not exclusive to us. I think that in general, people that leave the church and their kids are still in it, I think that that's also kind of valid. But I think that was a hard thing for me is that could happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I think in general, that's the thing that we're coming up with is if our kids choose to do something different than what we think, we have to be supportive, and we teach them the trauma that was taught or that was brought upon us in hopes, like you said, Whitney, to protect them from it. But at the same time, it is ultimately their choice, and we'll be there to support them.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's one of, not necessarily a disagreement in our house, but I'm like, if they do that, then it's whatever, right? Like if they believe one religion versus another, I'm okay with that, just like I am with everybody else. It's your decision, it's your beliefs, you go with it. I'm not going to be as upset as, like, our conversations at home have been just like what we just talked about, where Whitney would be disappointed and kind of trying to constantly prove it wrong. Where
With a kid?
yeah, like if they,
I don't know if I would. I don't think I would go. I don't think I'd constantly be proving it wrong, but I think it would be like we would have some tough decisions, like discussions about, like, especially as a woman, and
Like major reservation. of
yeah, like
what are
as a woman, you're getting into a
signing on to?
religion where you are less than, and I know that's blunt and harsh, and I know a lot of women in the church would not agree with that, but you are treated less than. Like, you don't get a hold the top callings, you don't get a hold major calling, like, and it's not like you don't
get to wear swimsuits to Girl Scout camp.
And it's 2024.
you can, but
It's
with no
2024.
two-piece.
But you have to put a t-shirt over it.
In 2024, men are having babies. So,
I mean, true. I mean, yeah, just as a woman, and we're only raising girls, so I think that would be a discussion too of, like, there's things that are expected of you that maybe you don't feel like you'd want, like, you know.
Well,
so,
and I think Brad brings up a good point. You want to support your kids in whatever choices they make, like, obviously in regards to religion and in general, I think, but there are some things, but the struggle I always have is that, yes, we are unconditionally loving them. My fear is that they're going to be taught something that prevents them from connecting with us. And I think that, if that's, and not that I mean, I would support my kids in whatever religion they decided to go to, but I do think that's the biggest struggle I have, is just that, what are they going to start believing that might separate them from us?
That comes at a cost.
Yeah, that could.
that's and that's super valid. But it kind of transitions into something I was just thinking about, where I think there are a lot of good things that the church teaches families,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And one of those things is that I kind of like is, teach them good principles, teach your kids good principles, and let them govern themselves, or whatever the scripture says, right? Where they're with social media, with the internet, with all of these additional sources of information that we didn't have to deal with as kids, our kids are going to be convinced that we're idiots from all sorts of different angles, not necessarily
That's a good
only
point.
religion.
That's a good point.
So if we take the time to build, not necessarily just teach them principles. That
Connect.
sounds so esoteric. But yeah, if we take the time to connect and build a relationship with them, they're going to question anything that is told to them, that to think differently about that relationship.
I
So
think
That-
that's,
I think-
I think that's actually perfect.
100%.
I feel like that's actually, Asher, 8 years old, she said she wanted to be baptized. And we're like, okay, like why? And she said, well, all my friends are doing it. And so we kind of walked through that. We ended up having the missionaries come over because we're like, if you're going to do this and make this choice, we want you to know exactly what you're signing up for.
Well, and neither one of us wanted to be the one telling her.
As an 8-year-old,
As an 8-year-old.
Well, so that's a good point, Brad. The age of accountability. Is it really 8 years old?
Well,
I mean, the law says
You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like-
Jay.
The law
Yes.
says 18, but
but I think time,
Those are where the gospel can be questioned, in my opinion.
well, and I think that's ultimately the decision we made, is that, it's more important to support her in this decision and still show her. It was more like it's easier to show them what real love is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And they're going to
Yes.
experience that. And when they connect with that, then they're going to question the rest. They're not going to question us. And I think that's what we focused on, is just living our life and really connecting with her and the kids in general. And I mean, she's not.
And I think a lot of it was, if we come down hard on this, of like, you're not going to do it, then the question is, well, why not?
That
Like,
pushes
why are
them
you
away
holding
almost,
me
right?
back
Yes.
from
Don't
what I
date
want?
Yeah.
that boy.
Yeah.
What do they do? Date the
Yep.
boy.
Yeah, because we're
think
all
it's the
in
key
the
of
one
what do
holding
they
them
do
back.
the key of
Always date the boys.
support, concern, and support, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I think, but I'm going to support you in any way that I can.
Yeah, and I ultimately think that support and that connection trumps everything else. That's where they feel safe.
And as a parent, that's ultimately what we want with our kids.
Yeah,
Like, if we aren't there to support them, there's going to be a lot of other consequences that come up.
Because I think the baptism thing came up at our house as well at the age of 8, where it was Izzy wanted to be baptized. But yet we were like, you haven't been to church. Like, do you know what baptism is? Why do you want to be baptized? Like, if that's what your goal is, help us understand and we'll help you achieve it.
It's because all my cousins got a party out of
That's
it.
exactly,
Yeah.
that's exactly
You
You gotta
100%.
be baptized in
100%.
water.
I'm
and
like,
then
I
you
would
have
get
a
baptized for some of those parties.
especially for some of the parties they're having lately.
Our parties
So-
are not
It's like
that
freaking wedding reception. I'm like,
No,
what
jeez.
the hell?
Yeah.
Looking at the
Like-
quinceañeras, like I was showing Izzy, I'm like, do you want
Hey,
a
that's a
baptism,
good
which
point,
is this,
Brad.
where you're getting like
Dunked.
Bibles and scriptures and whatever other religious stuff you're getting, or do you want this party like a quinceañera? Like,
But
We
they've
just gave her a
not
regular
that
birthday
please.
party.
That's
but I
so-
just
7
gave her,
years from now.
gave her like options.
I'm only
of like,
8.
hey, like this is.
I don't wanna
You can
wait.
either get scriptures or you can get like a party. What do you want? She's like, I want the party, man. That's what
That
I
is
want.
hilarious.
And so that's literally what it came down to for her was, I want a party. I want to go to the arcade. I want to have, all this fun stuff and presents. And I'm like, well, if you get baptized, you're going to have presents you don't really use or like, because we don't go to church. You're not going to like the scriptures. You're not going to like your scripture holder
Marker.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, it just
But
came.
if you have,
It just came down
if
to
you have
she
an
didn't
8-year-old birthday
actually-
party, yeah.
She just didn't know. It was just like
didn't know.
everybody's doing it. So
Yeah.
So
I
would
wanna
you
do it.
say
It was literally just a party thing. It wasn't necessarily I want to be baptized. It was like, I just want a party in my name.
So are you saying that at age 8 is the age of accountability, or they're still manipulative at that age?
Well, to the story.
Oh, they're still
I
manipulative.
object,
Oh.
leading the witness.
Yeah. Yeah, religion leading the witness. I mean, the party leading the witness. But that's truly what it was for our
I agree.
eight-year-old,
I
right?
Well,
agree.
yeah, I think that is for a lot of kids.
I think that was very similar for Asher in the sense of like that's what all of her friends were doing. It was the parties, it was the attention. Like, yeah, every kid is gonna want.
Well,
that,
and it's hard
know?
when you feel like all of your friends and family members, like this is what you do at 8 years old, and then
Yeah.
you're one that's like, oh, well, I
Especially-
guess I don't know
I
if
didn't
I'm
get it,
doing
right.
that. Yeah.
Especially when you have a cousin or a family member very similar in age.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which
That's-
our child did have a cousin that was
The same.
very similar
Yeah.
in age. And it was, hey, we're going to dinner and we're having a party and he's getting presents. I'm like, well, do you see the presents weren't like art projects and other things? Like,
Yeah.
But that's where
that's
they
overlooked, right?
the
But
kids start seeing that
it's
there's a
opening.
difference. There's a
Right.
difference between them and
Yes.
some of the community.
Yep.
And I think when bringing that out and showing that of this is what it is, I think that's when she was like, yeah, I'd rather just have a party. Like I don't want those gifts because I don't really know what they are. Or I can't use
I don't
them.
connect to those.
Yeah. And so
I don't know if this is true for you guys or not, but as I have been on this side of the belief system and the religion, certain things that I look back on have a different tint, a different coloring, a different.
speak more, Ty. Speak
What color are they?
Well, for example,
Speak on these dudes.
is it possible that age 8 is actually just before the age of accountability? So you get them baptized, make them make these covenants and these commitments, which helps keep them in later on.
Oh, I mean, I would say 100%, which ultimately makes it even the more point of how difficult it is to actually leave or question it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, earlier when we started talking about this stuff, on a daily basis, there is some sort of permeance in my personality of my upbringing in the church every single day. You know, there's a common thing that apologists and ex-mos say, right? It's like you can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of the opposite. Like, it doesn't leave me alone. Like,
It can't leave you alone.
It is
it
who
was
you were for so
so-
long.
So ingrained.
Yes.
that programming. There's a great book out there that talks about how this occurred called Recovering Agency.
Uh-huh.
And I recommend it highly. It's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Well, and
Breaks it down.
I think that is such a common saying of, yeah, why do those that leave the church, they can't leave it alone? And it's almost as if they don't realize like that has been a part of us for 20, 30, sometimes 40, 50 years of our freaking life.
Well, and some of us love Utah in spite of the church being here. So,
Yeah.
so we don't want to leave. You know, I was totally
Well, it's
that
what
guy
shaped
too.
us. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, if you hate the church, why are you in Utah? Leave
Yeah.
Utah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's-
so naive.
and I would probably speak more for myself and Curry at this point of that, where from a young age, I don't know if we necessarily believed.
Correct.
And so, like, us leaving the church or leaving it behind or whatever you want to call it was never a thing for me, at least.
Right. And I would agree. Like,
Right. Like, I was never like disappointed or mad that like I was lied to or whatever, like in my thoughts. Right.
it was a very easy exit.
Yeah, it was an easy exit for me. But a lot of people, like what you were saying, is you can leave the church, but you can't leave the church.
Well, and I would actually lump myself in that category too,
Right.
because as a very young child, I would say 5 or 6 years old, I was in primary, you know, in the big group, not just the little class, but the big group. I don't know what they call the opening exercises or something, but I remember them saying things like, you actually feel the Spirit more at home than you feel it here. And I'm like, I don't ever feel it. So what's wrong with me? Or what's wrong with my house? Where I don't feel this spirit that you're talking about. So, I mean, to your point, Brad, like I was questioning those things because it's like, I'm not feeling this. What is wrong with me? Why am I broken here? Yeah. And then later on, doing the mission and doing those things, like that was very much social pressure. Right. Like, and it had nothing to do with community. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with things like a girlfriend saying, I'm going to marry a return missionary.
And if you don't go.
That's
right?
the culture.
My girlfriend gave me that.
Not that I thought that
my girlfriend gave me that same thing. And I said, well, I guess it's not meant to be.
And I wasn't under any impression that I was going to marry that girl in particular. Right.
Yeah.
You just thought, how rude.
Well, I just thought, how many girls out there have this opinion?
Same idea.
Another pressure. It's another pressure.
Yeah.
Along with all the others.
So, I mean, that's...
But that goes back to the whole thing is, as you grow up in a religion, Mormon specific, it is planned out.
Yeah.
That it is accepted that you will just go on a mission at that point, and then life happens from there. But I think the biggest struggle is just trying to figure out how to navigate that as things change.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's weird because like I never remember myself as a believer, like even in high school, like, but I wanted to be. Does that make sense? Like, like this plan made sense in my head. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to believe that it was true. Like I like when I was 15, my cousin died in a car accident and I was in the car and I remember being in the hospital and I was like begging that if I changed, if I changed my thoughts or if I, that would he bring him back or what, does that make sense? Like, and I kind of am like, it's so crazy that a religion can make you think that if you could do that, somebody would come back. Does that make sense?
If you became enough.
Yeah. If I became enough, if I sacrificed enough, if I worked harder, if I,
changed me.
But yet I didn't believe it, but I wanted to. I wanted to believe that there was this greater plan, that I was going to see my cousin, that I was going to be with my family forever. Like that made perfect sense in my head that there was this plan and it solved every question that you had.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's like they died of cancer because you didn't have the faith to heal them. But then they let the priesthood off the hook by saying, well, this was God's will, so it didn't happen.
But how do we reconcile that?
There is no reconciling it. That is the answer they have on both sides of the story. Mm-hmm. There's always an answer. What I hate is the answer where it's your lack of faith.
Which I think is
a big part of it.
Right.
And maybe that's ultimately what I kept feeling, is that it was my lack of faith that I wasn't a believer or that I couldn't do the things that I was supposed to fit into this plan. Does that make sense?
But who taught you that it was your lack of faith? Where did you learn that?
I think it was taught to us anytime you question something that like it was every Sunday, every Sunday, every Wednesday when you went to the youth activities, like that's like, it was so ingrained in you that you weren't good enough.
Any unanswerable question was your lack of faith.
It's just like Whitney with her friend, right? He was not LDS. He passed away. And then Whitney was seeking faith, right?
I can relate with that so much.
What can I do? Just like you said with the car accident, Whitney was doing with her friend of like, what can I do to myself to make things better for my friend?
Yes.
Even though he was not LDS.
Yeah.
What can I do? And, as an outsider for myself, it was like, he wasn't LDS, right? Like, he's going to the bottom kingdom anyways. Might as well just live life.
You have no fucking soul, bro.
Unfortunately, I don't, right? On that realistic tears of heaven.
Unfortunately, I
That-
don't.
which actually you and Curry have in common, which now so much is making sense.
Right? And it's
Of why you didn't struggle with the religion aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not.
We never
They don't have
connected to
souls,
it.
so-
And the whole time
We
I
don't
was
have
like-
souls. We're
the whole
soulless.
time I was like, I will fake it till I make it with her. Like, I love Whitney and I love this, and I will go to church. I will go get a temple recommend if I have to.
You wanted to make her happy.
Yeah.
And if that included,
Getting a temple recommend.
so be it.
I mean, I can tell a story.
I
Brad,
don't know
Brad,
if he would have paid tithing.
I guarantee
I would
you.
not have paid tithing.
He
but I
would
would
not
have
have.
maybe paid portion, maybe like 2%. Like, hey, I only make $20,000.
He would have made it up to $1.
I guarantee.
Here's $20 to get my marriage in order.
I guarantee people listening to this podcast can relate to that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly
can't be the
church
only
attending.
It was Brad who didn't believe, and then me who had the like, you leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. Because I definitely went through that phase where I was like, my family needs to know this. Like,
Yeah, and we had that,
right,
and we had
right.
that conversation multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm like, Whitney, like, leave it alone. Like,
Okay.
who cares? Like, you believe, just let them believe whatever they
the
want.
hardest thing
That
for
was
me,
right?
and the reason, yes, because Brad, I mean, he didn't believe, so it was just like, let them believe whatever they want, they're fine. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like,
I've been lied to.
this is all make believe. So now I need my family to know that they're, because in reality, what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling when I leave is kind of what Ty said earlier. Like, a weight I didn't even know I was carrying is now off my shoulders. I feel freer. I'm less judgmental towards people. I have a more open mind of accepting others and different beliefs and hearing like, to me, it was honestly like, once I could grasp the fact that the church, I wasn't going to be in the church anymore and that it had fallen apart for me. Once I accepted that, I actually was so much happier. And I was like, my family needs this. Like,
Yeah.
Well, it was,
In a
it was-
sense, Whitney, this is the same thing that I think Justin and I am speaking for you, Justin, dealt with very similarly with coming out. Like, this is what we're feeling, and there's a weight off our shoulders by telling and expressing and allowing what we've been told to what our reality is. We dealt with that coming out.
I very much think that people leaving the church and leaving, like we said, those teachings and those instilled beliefs from the day you were born, I do believe that that experience is very similar to the coming out experience of like, you question whether your family's going to accept you if you don't believe the same way that they do. You question how you fit in at work. You fit
A new
in
sense of belonging in
a new
community.
friend group. Like how are your friends going to react? Like, it is traumatizing for people to, it's not an easy choice.
not envy it.
It is not something that's just like, oh, I want to drink alcohol, so I'm going to leave the church. Like there is, for most people, it is a process, and it's painful, and there are many, many tears. Like I think that's a good point.
It's a reconciling of what I've been taught versus what I feel is which is authentic.
Yeah.
How do I reconcile these two
coming,
realities?
Coming out is probably harder. I'm coming from an outsider.
But
I would
I
assume
think they're
it's-
very
it's-
similar.
It's similar, but it's like coming out like you're going to the grocery store together, right?
yeah.
Like when I go to the grocery store, people don't know if I'm Mormon or not.
I can tell.
I mean, Brad,
We know with
I
that
mean,
12 pack of
I
beer.
agree.
There's
Whitney's looking at
similarities,
Brad
but
like,
I agree.
are you announcing something,
I
Brad?
guess what I'm saying is
No,
like I commend you guys because that is not an easy task.
It's kind of like you doubled down. It's like,
It's-
not only am I leaving the church, I'm coming out of the
But
closet.
I think the
well,
emotional
maybe that part of it
trauma
made it easier. Maybe that was
Right.
why I never fully subscribed to it, or
Because
couldn't,
you knew
because
there
I
was a
knew that there
distance.
was it wasn't possible.
Sure.
But and I think you're right, Brad. I do think there was probably some more challenges to that, but I really sympathize with those that went through that process, because I do think there are a lot of similarities and a lot of pain.
Oh, for sure.
And going back to Whitney's point of after that process, you start to experience life without the guilt and without the shame and without the weight. Why wouldn't you want to tell your family about that?
Yeah, why wouldn't my family want to live
in the
like
same
this?
way that
Like,
people find happiness in the church and they want to share that happiness with people? Why wouldn't we want to share our happiness and the weight that was lifted off of us? And I get that there's a conflict there, but I also think there needs to be more compassion and understanding to our experience leaving the church as well.
I think that was a big thing for me. Like part of me wanted my family just to hear what I had to say. Like,
Yeah.
To see your side of it.
yeah, just to hear me out. Like I knew deep down, of course, that like I'm not really going to change their mind on something, but I hope that we can have a conversation about it, and it leaves them with maybe some things to think about. But nobody wants to hear it.
Did you think that at the time, though?
What?
Like when you wrote your grandma a letter?
Did I think it was going to change her
said-
mind? No.
Well, you wanted to get it out there of like, hey, maybe.
No, I don't think
Maybe
it was
not.
going to change her mind. But I think I wanted to be understood of where I was coming from, and not that this decision also hadn't been made lightly. That I didn't just go, well, no big deal. Like, I'm out. It wasn't an easy decision. So I think I also wanted people to know that wasn't an easy decision for me.
Because
Oh, go ahead.
and I think it's been talked about too, like with your departure from the church at the beginning, at least, it was questioned by, well, you left the church because you want to drink and not feel guilty for it, or whatever it was. But it wasn't
That's
right
a
off the
common
bat,
thing
right?
that
Yeah.
apologists say, right?
Yeah, I don't
they
remember
want to go off and
anyone
live in
saying
sin.
that to me. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
if you
amazing.
think
All the
back, you
things the
probably
Mormon
think about it.
church looked at me and said are sinful. Like, I was no longer triggered in that way. Like, I felt more authentic and honest and all of
yeah,
these
for
things.
sure. Definitely.
But it took me leaving in order to get there.
Yeah, and it's questioned of like, are you leaving because you just want to live guilt free? And it's not necessarily living guilt free. It's just living in peace with whatever.
I want to live shame free. And it's
Shame-free.
Right.
It's the shame I put on myself that is intolerable.
Right.
So
So do you feel like, Ty, that you still, well, not still, do you feel like your family that has stayed in the church looks at you differently now that you've left the church?
I'm certain they do. And I have a very specific example this has governed why I haven't been more vocal about my exit. I remember a cousin of mine that blasted Facebook with all of the truthfulness, like all the things, and just came down really hard and very critical of the church and stuff like that. And I just remember this lack of support, and everything like that. So as I was exiting, which is kind of a funny story in and of itself, as I dated different women, I kind of got further and further along in my exit and my belief path was. Maybe I'll talk about that in a minute, but I just remember that was not well received. And I was one of those that read that post and was like, oh, this poor guy, he has lost his soul.
Interesting.
So knowing that that's probably how it would be received.
Yeah.
I don't bring it up much.
Yeah.
That said, I did have a surprise visit from my father this last weekend. Things have been strained between us. I won't lie. And he was asking, like, how are you doing? And I'm like, and as he kept digging, I just finally said, for me, Dad, I'm doing really well. And the reason is I've stopped living a lie that I've lived for over 40 years. And he was thinking that, like, at first, I'm guessing. I'm
He's
putting
gonna
words
be
in
gay.
his mouth.
He thought you were coming out of
He thought I was gay. I had a friend coming in from Texas, so clearly this was happening. Shout out to Josh. Thanks for coming to town.
Yes.
Avid listener.
Avid listener. We had dinner with Josh when he was in town. It was
dinner.
great. I just said, it dawned on him kind of what I was saying, because I'm 48, 40 years, age of accountability.
Yep.
Do the math. And he refused to go any deeper on it. And I had my answer. I said what needed to be said. The message was sent. He didn't want to go any deeper on it. I didn't care to go any deeper on it. There's just hurt feelings on that side, right? The one thing I did want to say though was like, as after the divorce, when I would date somebody and be interested and reach some level of commitment, sometimes they would be LDS, sometimes they wouldn't, and I would say, oh yeah, eventually I'd like to go to church with you, or I would take you to the temple, and it seems like after several relationships, I got further and further away from that.
We remember that. Like, we remember when all of a sudden, like, Ty would be getting drunk with us out in the driveway, and then 2 weeks later, he's like, "Yeah, this might be the one. We want to get married in the
want to
temple.
go to the temple. I'm going to church with her.
You might want to put your beer down.
I got to put my beer down tonight because I got to go to church tomorrow.
I can confirm I was there.
And we loved you regardless.
You did. And honestly, like, so I went through that process. At the end of the marriage, I felt like I was trying to do everything I could to be that Mormon guy, to get over my issues and to make the marriage work. I really sincerely wanted to do that. And I never got an answer. I never got the help. I did everything. I followed every rule, and I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So after the divorce and hanging out with you guys always supported me with wherever I was at. And that's what I needed at the time. I didn't need to be pushed one way or another, and you never did. So I'm super grateful that I had friends like you guys who had been through it, understood it, and were super patient with me.
Well, at the same time, if you would have gotten married in the temple with one of those ladies, we would have been there at the door when you walked out.
We would have been on the temple grounds.
We would have had our tequila in hand.
We would have been taking shots out of our pockets and waiting for you at the door.
Trying to give guys some shots out of our pockets.
Well, as I started letting myself off the hook and not expecting, just letting go of that shame and all of that, and looking deeper into some of the factual evidence for myself, things that just didn't add up as I was looking through stuff. Obviously, I got there on my own. One interesting thing, though, I will mention is, so in the LDS church, when you're sealed, it's for eternity, and they talk about families being forever and stuff like that. Originally, I had met with the bishop one of the last times I went to church and said, I'd like to start a temple divorce. And I was really doing that at my ex-wife. I was doing that to hurt her, and then it dawned on me, if I resigned from the church, it would accomplish essentially the same thing, I believe. So I started going down that path, and the funny thing is, once I received notification that the resignation had gone through, like I had moved into a place where I did it for me.
Yeah.
I did it to let that was a personal physical action that I could take to let myself,
Heal.
to tell myself it's okay to let go of this. It's okay to not be so critical of yourself. It's okay to not believe you have to be perfect
And to let it go.
and to let it go. You got it,
Right.
Curry.
Yeah. And for the listeners, there's when you get married in the church, the LDS church, you get married not only legally, but you get married
For
spiritually in the church, right?
Yep.
So if you get, for example, Whitney.
Only if you're
Why am I the
worthy.
example?
You are always the example.
Whitney's divorced. We got married after the divorce, but yet in the church she was still like married to her ex-husband.
Well, no, I got excommunicated.
Which dun dun dun.
Which
Does
so
that mean does
that
or
cancel
not
that?
mean?
I think it cancels all your blessings.
Yeah. You lose.
do you know what's very fascinating? There's only one member of the church here.
Me?
Bradley?
Brad is the only Mormon amongst us.
That's true because I think when the missionaries show up, it's
funny.
for you.
I'll take ownership because I love talking to him.
Yeah. Brad's name is the
people,
only
that
one that
is
is
funny.
still on the records.
Of
That
all
is
people that
funny.
were not in, you are the
You're
only
the
one
only one
that's
in.
Person furthest out.
That is so funny. That is
But
so funny.
It was so shocking to me where growing up not believing and then marrying Whitney, she was like, I might still be sealed to Jason in the afterlife. I'm like, oh, I don't care about that. Like, it's totally
I
fine.
don't care. He can have you.
Totally fine.
I only want you for this life anyway. Done.
We'll get whatever years we can. You can have back after that.
Ash to ash is where it goes.
I don't know
hilarious.
how trustworthy Reddit is, but according
Depends on what feed.
according to Reddit, when there's a resignation or something like that, only half of the sealing doesn't apply. So if you were sealed, so if say Jason had stayed in the church or whatever, and Haley's still in the church, right?
the
She's
bottom
still
half.
sealed. To me, I am no longer eligible for those blessings, but her side of the ceiling holds or something. Isn't that wild?
Damn.
No one's there to
girl,
bring
that
her
is-
through the veil. So
Well,
now
that's
what?
Reddit.
We are going to make a
You know,
clone of you, and
it's-
one of you will go to hell, and one will go.
I'm guessing that God's going to figure it out. And I'm also guessing
okay.
that he really doesn't give a fuck.
So you
if you're
believe in a
Mormon or
That
not.
brings you back.
So
that
you
brings
believe in
us
a God
to
still?
yeah. What do you believe now?
in a God?
Yeah. What do you?
What do you believe now?
Oh, here we go.
Starting
Here we
time.
go.
going
Here we go.
Counterclockwise.
Do I believe in a God? I think I believe in intelligent design. I think there is a higher life form out there. My favorite movie is The Matrix. So
Don't say
we're
Steve
all
Jobs.
we are all in a simulation. no. But seriously, I've explored a lot of different things that kind of add to what governs me personally and spiritually. So I'm kind of up in the air on a bunch of that stuff. Can't really say I'm Christian. Can't say I'm not.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. Justin, how about you?
Well, for me, it makes zero logical sense, so Brad will not agree.
So scientifically, it doesn't exist.
There is no, yeah, may or may not. I don't know. I'm not much of a science person, so, but I truly think that we are all connected energetically. I think, and when I say we, I feel like just the life in general and the earth and living everything, plants, trees, all of it. I think we're all interconnected, and I think that, I don't know, like I in a sense, it is a higher power, but one that controls us. I don't believe that there's something above us that's like, I have a hard time thinking that why was I selected to be born in a privileged white predominantly neighborhood family and
as a human.
and you see
as a human.
even as a human you 100% and why was I selected for this great life when there are people severely suffering across the
else. You
oceans or
suffered in the
whatever,
last
or even
lifetime.
across the freeways. Like,
paid your dues.
but like,
I make you white.
and and maybe I have a hard time thinking that there's a being or something that's selecting that. Now,
Sure.
to Whitney's point, after this life, do I get to experience what that's like? And maybe that'll make me more compassionate and empathetic in the next life. Who knows? But I do think there is a sense of just interconnected, and when we can slow down and do drugs, we can
Do drugs and not.
Not expecting that.
I don't know what happened there.
Welcome to the Tipsy Neighbors.
We just went from one extreme to the wow, I was following you
We went
along.
back to the 1970s.
I was on
or
board.
50s.
And then there was a needle in my arm. I don't know what happened.
there is a sense that maybe I don't know. I do think that I'll be honest, I love pot and I have enjoyed being high, and I think that I think a lot deeply when I am, or a lot more deeply. And I think that that's opened my mind to just a whole another perspective.
I love it.
So what is your thoughts on afterlife?
I would have to say I'm a little agnostic in that. I think that when I die, there's an energy inside me that lives on. And you can say that that's a spirit, whatever term that is. People can say whatever. I think my physical body does become part of the earth and whatnot. But I think that my energy will live on. And whether that's in the trees, that's in the mice
In
that's
some
driving
form.
Curry crazy, or something else.
I will murder you again.
If you haunt my dreams.
Yeah.
Oh, my sweet Justin, what have I done?
Where's the broom? I'll get you this time.
But I don't believe in a heaven or hell. I just think that it's
There's a continuing
it's a never-ending
of energy.
experience, and I think that is eternity, is a never-ending experience.
I think it's funny you called me out on we were opposite, but when it comes to my turn, I think we align more so than you think.
What is yours? Let's hear yours.
Yeah, go for it,
So
Brett.
out of order.
It's fine.
There's no order.
There is no
So,
order
It's a
here.
round table.
He was going in a clock order.
I was going in a not a counterclockwise.
It's that military training coming through
Clockwise
again.
order. I'm now out of order. But I'm kind of in the same thing. I'm not religious. I don't think there is a higher being or power. I think everything is somehow interconnected. And what I say with that is it's when you die, I don't think there's a heaven. I think you go into the earth as you're supposed to, not into a concrete box as we're currently doing.
Okay.
But I think if you're buried into the ground, as in the old days, you are then decomposed into the ground. You are then becoming whatever it is. You're part of the earth. You become part of plant, tree, whatever.
Okay.
And so part of that with yours and mine, with the what is afterlife, I don't think there's a heaven or hell. I don't think there's this consciousness necessarily
Got it.
with what happens. But I think what is supposed to happen is you're supposed to become one with the earth, and then it basically recycles, right? You become part of the dirt. You become part of plant. You become part of animal that eats plant. An animal that eats animal, whatever. And it comes part of this cycle, and it's part of this whatever.
Continuation.
Yeah, this continuum of what life is, with at a cellular level. I don't think it's necessarily at a God level. I think it's at a cellular level.
So you don't believe that the consciousness continues?
I don't think so.
I don't either, in the same sense of what we feel like conscious is now.
Got it.
but I also, going back to your being one with the earth, I feel like there's a desire to become that before death.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Explain.
I feel like I feel like there's this desire to become one with earth before I die, to be more conscious of the environment we live in, the plants, the trees, all of that, and to know that we are all interconnected even while I'm alive. Does that make sense? It's weird. It's a weird, like, it's something that I'm like, I just feel like there is a greater connection
Yeah.
there. It's trying to access it, if you will.
Yeah. And like I had this conversation at work today with someone at work that actually listens to our podcast, but I've said before in a previous podcast, our work mission for this year is Hello Human Kindness. And she was talking to me about this, and she was like, you are like a prime example of human kindness. And to me, it doesn't quite make sense without religion of what human kindness means. But I was trying to explain to her, I'm like, it's almost, I don't believe in religion in general, which seems, in my brain, human kindness goes with religion or should go with religion. But in my history, it has not. It has not, right? And so that's where karma kind of comes into play. And I'm like, well, for me, it's kind of karma. That's what the term is for it. I can't put a term on it for myself. But if I give out good during my life and my consciousness now, I'm getting, if you would call it, karma back.
Right.
Of good karma, right? Where I think when I die, my consciousness ends and I become part of the process of the world and plants and a cellular level. But
I think we've found the
right
next
now-
topic for your next poem.
Go ahead, sir. What does consciousness mean at a non-religious level?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to read
Please
that.
supply the poem next.
Yes.
Next podcast.
Next
I will give a
podcast we'll have
reflection. I will give a reflection. Next podcast. That's what we call it at work.
I love it.
But I mean, it was just kind of
Reflection.
interesting with this conversation now, and then the conversation I had at work the same day was like, what does kindness mean to you? And I think in the past it used to be what religion was supposed to mean,
Yeah.
but to me, it's what you should be and what, like in this consciousness, what you should get back
As a
is what
human.
you put out, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I try to live my life, even though we've had the podcast before about parenting and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
We
could
do
you,
our best,
could
though.
I
you,
don't know how to figure that
could
part
you
out.
use
You're
that
doing great.
same thing with your kids?
It's hard. It's very, very,
Karma,
very, very.
bitch.
I also do live in reality. I live in reality too at the same time, right?
So good.
Amazing.
But you know, it's one of those things. So that's kind of where I'm at, you know, religiously and consciousnly,
Yeah.
right?
So do you differ, Whitney? With
How do you
Brad?
coexist with
Almost
that, Whitney?
100%.
Okay.
We believe differently.
Awesome.
Yeah, we do.
Which is very interesting because growing up, I grew up with parents who believed the same thing. And then I got married to someone and we believe the same thing. So it is very interesting being married to someone and having that be okay.
Yeah.
That we have
Right,
different views. That took me a little bit to wrap my mind around when I started forming my own belief system.
Sure.
I believe in reincarnation. I think that it's kind of the energy thing of like, we all have an energy within us. And I believe that we all have like a higher consciousness too. I think that's where a lot of like our intuition and stuff comes from.
Is your past experiences?
Your past experiences.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can relate
And
a
I
little
feel
bit
like
to that.
part of your like innate personality also is from past lives and things that you've learned, and those turn into past like some personality traits that come with you into the next life, and things that you've learned, like maybe you've learned to be really patient in one life, or you've gone through experiences, and those kind of innately carry through to these other lives.
So more of a subconscious reaction. Like we're subconsciously, we have these reactions or personalities, but we can't remember as to
You can't
why
remember
we have
why.
Because of
It just becomes
experience.
like,
Experience past has created what you are now.
yep. So that's,
So is it like a reborn thing? Like for me, it's kind like you're speaking and I'm kind of getting it. Right? Well, into
Finally,
a fact,
wow.
into a fact
You
of
are
like,
speaking and I'm hearing you.
like reincarnation of like, okay, well, I become part of the earth, and like kind of like I talked about, where you become part of the dirt, the soil, the nutrients.
No, not the same.
No.
But then you become part of
the essence lives on.
whatever. Like it's kind of like I kind of believe the same, but there's not a consciousness associated to it.
and I think it's all
yeah,
consciousness
okay.
afterwards.
There's an energy. There's an energy, as like Justin said.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of feel. Is there's an energy to it, but there's not a consciousness to it.
I actually think it's similar. I think you're
It's similar, but for me, you have that consciousness and you take that into your next.
so
Your next
so.
life.
Interesting.
Do you think that it's easy for you to believe separate things? Because previously, like growing up, you mentioned your parents believed the same thing. And I think that that was very important because they believed that there was an afterlife, and they had to believe the same thing in order for that plan to keep going
There was
and
a
for
goal.
you to have this celestial life. But where you don't believe in that anymore, allowing each other to have different beliefs and supporting each other in that is easier because it's not based on your eternal salvation, essentially.
Yeah,
Would you
I
say
do
that
think
that-
that's part of it.
so.
I mean, it was really weird for me to be like, wait, this is what you believe? That's okay. Like, not even
Well-
close to what I believe, or, whatever. But
Because it seems to me, growing up, what the LDS heaven was, the afterlife, was you basically had like 3 different buildings, right? It was like the super nice building, the okay building, and like you kind of made it building. Where I mean,
Loser.
In all honesty, right? Like, so if you made it to the middle one, the top one could come down and say hello and
Yeah.
meet with you.
Yeah,
talk
they
to
were
your
they
wife.
were they could visit,
And so,
but
it
you
was-
couldn't visit them.
Yeah, it was one of those like you had to be in the same room or the same building as someone.
Yeah, you could go down the stairs, but you couldn't go up.
Yes. Where now both of our beliefs are different in the fact of like there's no hierarchy, there's no heaven, there's no room, there's no building. It's what we are with nature in general, like the world, the universe, whatever, right? And I think for me that makes it easy. I don't know if it's the same for you, where it's not like you're in the same room or not in the same room as someone or the same heaven.
yeah, I mean, I think that's what, like, now I'm not in charge of anyone's salvation either. Like, right? I'm not in charge of making sure that my spouse
point.
gets
love that.
there
Or your
and that
kids.
and my kids get, like, I'm not in charge of
That
like everyone's
Oh,
salvation to come together.
yes.
And I
Good
think that
point.
has given me some room to say,
Good
it's okay
point.
that I believe this. It's okay that he believes this. It's okay for my kids to
Even
have
your
their own
kids,
thoughts.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you allow your
Siblings.
kids
when
at
you
that
think about
point
the
to
pressure of
be.
like
Yes.
when you think about the pressure of like, I mean, I look at your family, Curry, like the pressure from your family to make you fit a certain mold
Absolutely.
to then be a part of this greater picture, and the weight that essentially is on your parents.
Yeah, but like what
to
he said,
fulfill
like
that.
if you can let go of that and allow your kids to just be and just be themselves and do that, that's gone.
Right.
Then you
it's
can
a huge
step
wo-
in
another weight
and
lifted
just
off you.
love
Yes.
them for who they are.
So what's your thought on afterlife?
Yeah, what do you believe?
Well, I am completely different than all of you. I don't believe in anything. I am totally fine
I'm going to
with
convince you
just
otherwise.
being done. I am
sleep.
I am very fine with just being done. When my life is over, I am done and that's it, and that's enough.
I think we're similar on multiple levels. You just don't know it.
And
'Cause my
and I think
consciousness
that
is done
that has progressed from leaving religion that told me what it was to then coming to my own of just figuring out I don't really care. I don't care to know. I don't care to focus on it. I don't care to know or not know what happens after. I'm fine with whatever. And
He's probably more agnostic, would you say?
I would
than
say
atheist?
more agnostic.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter, and I just don't care to focus on it. I'll be a good human. I'm going to try my best to raise good humans. I'm going to love really big, and I'm going to love really hard, and when I'm done, I'm done.
And I think that's where we all have very different thoughts on that, right? Of what the afterlife is. But the current life in the current earth life or consciousness or whatever you want to call it, I think we're all very similar here in this room.
Very aligned. I agree.
We want the best for everyone around us, and we want to spread positivity.
And be good humans.
No, I agree 100%.
Be a good human.
I agree 100%. But I think what's unique is that we've spent the time to find the things that we connect on to allow us that experience. Because I truly think that the majority of people in this world they truly want a better life for other people and themselves and their kids.
Right.
And I think that the reason why I feel like we stand out is because we've taken the time to connect and to connect openly with each other in a totally non-judgmental. I mean, how many times have I come to you guys with like some crazy shit and you're just like, you laugh or you know what I mean? Like,
and we allow each other to be who they are.
Yeah.
We're not, like you said, Justin, earlier, we're not trying to fit a mold and put you back in a mold. We're allowing you to be who you are, and we're meeting you at that point.
Yeah.
You don't have to fit a mold here.
Yeah.
Amen.
And we can just let it be.
Yeah. And I think in religion too, like with the religion we grew up in, the LDS religion, I think that's what the teachings are supposed to be. I think they get misconstrued and judgment comes in and all those other things. But I think a lot of religions, no matter what it is, I think they try to speak those things. The things we are speaking within our group, I think those religions are trying to get out, but it gets misconstrued or whatever happens. But so it's not that you have to leave the religion to get to our point of view and cohesiveness. It's just realizing you can still have that and be open-minded and, accept everybody for what they believe or whatever.
I think it's a great point because there's many people who I know that are very LDS and are in it all. And I've had very similar conversations that we've had. And I think that I agree with you 100%.
Well, an LDS or of any religion.
Right.
Yeah. I think we're speaking from more of our experience from kind of where we come and in our surroundings. But I do agree with you on that.
I think the overall thing here is just being a good human.
Yeah, and acknowledging that other people have different experiences, you know, and so that adds to their faith or takes away from it. It doesn't matter. It's endeavoring to be a good human.
Yeah, and
whatever that looks like for
when
you.
we look at our kids trying to raise good humans and allowing them to find a path that resonates with them, whether it's in religion or not religion, teaching them to be good humans and continue that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And the relationship and the connection is more important than any belief system.
Correct.
That they choose to believe.
Correct.
For sure.
That's going to wrap it up for this episode. Don't forget, you can find us online at tipsyneighbors.com, at the Tipsy Neighbors on Instagram, and on X, formerly Twitter, at Tipsy Neighbors. We hope to hear from you soon.